Hey, what's happening, everyone? Pragmatic Addict here. So, I finally just got done seeing Saltburn. I almost had trouble with how to deliver that. I almost felt like saying, yeah, so I just got back from surviving Saltburn. I just got back from witnessing Saltburn. But I finally saw Saltburn, and this is a movie I've been looking forward to for a lot of reasons. I've been very excited about this movie. I want to say it's probably my most anticipated film of Q4 this year, alongside Killers of the Flower Moon that released a little bit ago. So first off, this is the second feature from director Emerald Fennell, who previously directed Promising Young Woman. Secondly, this also stars Barry Keoghan, which is an actor I pay very close attention to. I just find him very interesting with his screen presence. I also find the projects that he chooses to be extremely engaging as well. And lastly, just the buzz about this film. I've just been hearing that this is one of the biggest trips, one of the biggest mindfucks that cinema has put out in recent memory. Now, personally, I think that the premise and trailers alone were enough to sell me on this movie. Just seeing how cryptic it was, all the different, again, themes and genres that it would be tackling, it just looked like an interesting, again, mindfuck of a mystery. Along with its equally just wild-ass rating, this film had every selling point landing for me. So now that I have actually experienced what Saltburn is, in its wide scope, in what its full reveal is, we gotta talk about this movie. So first off, the intro to this movie, like its actual just opener, just seeing that little tease of what this film was going to be doing with Barry Keoghan, just seeing this already initial new light on him was enough to have me really intrigued and just kind of anticipating where him as an actor and his character was going to go, even without really knowing anything, again, with how cryptic the premise and the trailer were. I also thought it was a little bit different as far as like a love story aspect of this film. It's something that wasn't necessarily like a new idea, but just for this specific film, how it tackled the situation. Seeing the setting of this film being in the early 2000s with this kind of a character, how mysterious he was, but also kind of how like natural and almost just so likable he was, along with just like little hints and nods at what his feelings may be as a person or like toward this other main character, Jacob Aroldi's character, along with, yes, again, this all being helmed by Barry Keoghan as an actor. There were all things to make this somewhat classic love story opener just that much more fresh and original and interesting, and just did that much more to attach me to this character just so quickly. And also, I do want to note, just Barry Keoghan as an actor or performer, he just gets so much to work with as an actor and performer, along with like the way he carries as a character. The film also just showcases so much of him that I've wanted to see, and it's just so fucking exciting to watch. Also, the look of this movie is absolutely gorgeous. Not just the cinematography, but just this time, being in the early 2000s. So many important things were landing to me so fucking quickly in this movie. And another thing with Keoghan's character was kind of like what I said earlier, just how natural and just likable and seemingly innocent he is. It just makes you that much more concerned for his character, you know, seeing the hints that the trailer was nudging at, seeing the rating, and just knowing that this is going to be more of like a cryptic, kind of disturbing mindfuck. You're just like, please take care of my boy. I know he did some pretty unforgivable things in Killing of a Sacred Deer a little while back, but just take care of him in this movie. I will say though, at the point in the film where Keoghan's character Oliver is meeting Jacob Elordi, I forget the guy's last name, when he's meeting Jacob's character Felix, it wasn't that I was necessarily bothered by it, but during this point of the film, I really didn't have any complaints except up to this point, which was seemingly very important to the story. But this whole like portion of the film just felt kind of formulaic. It felt kind of dry. And just meeting Jacob's character Felix, it was just something that, again, it was not only the weakest part of the film so far, but it was really the only thing that just kind of like didn't hit me. And honestly, all it did was just make me feel that much more like Barry Keoghan's performance is going to be the real standout in this film. And not just that, but his character in general. It's going to be the main thing that's going to keep me attached, I think. Which I would still argue isn't necessarily like a completely bad thing. I mean, after all, Barry Keoghan was one of the main things, if not the main thing, that I was looking forward to in this film. It's just as something that like was significant to the story, it just didn't give me a whole lot. I just didn't take a whole lot from it that I had wanted to. And also just for the film's runtime and pacing especially, there are times, not just in general, but especially out of this thing, again with it just feeling kind of like prolonged and dry, where there are definite things that are kind of hard to ignore, where you're like, this could have been condensed a little more. This could have been just kind of completely cut from the film. But really quickly, another thing that kept me really attached to this film, which is a narrative aspect that I just generally kind of am a sucker for, is that everything that we're seeing in the film is told from Oliver, where all these things are things that he's recalling are all leading up to something that we just feel like, okay, if he's recalling this from wherever he is currently, this led to something pretty gigantic. It led to something significant, and what I loved about this movie is just that mystery aspect. It does so well with just having you experiencing it in the moment. Again, right now I really like this character, Oliver. Right now I don't really know what's going on with this character, what's really going on with the whole story. I don't know why he's recalling all these things in this manner, but it just did so good with not revealing anything and just letting things come at you one at a time. Now, one thing I do want to note is that once we get to the point where Oliver arrives at this state and you're meeting all these different zany characters, it did feel a little bit to the point where they are just acting. I mean, all the characters are very eccentric, very zany. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like the Addams Family at times. And like I said earlier, this wasn't necessarily a bad thing. You know, there's definitely some mystery to all these characters. They're all very, you know, stand out in their own way. Kind of like, well, who are these people? How did they get there? What are their personal stories? But again, this all goes back to just like how long the film can linger on one thing at a time and like its pacing and everything. For example, with this specific like area of the film, it can come off a lot at once. There's a lot of different over-the-top characters, and again, with the film's pacing, it can just leave you focused on them just rambling about something or just, you know, trying to take too much in at once, and that was a little bit bothersome to me. But also, weirdly enough, with talking about this whole like variety of characters, I also don't think that the film took the appropriate advantage of this whole scenario. Like, we're getting a lot at once, and it's lingering on these characters, but it's not something that you're necessarily taking away from it. It's just kind of coming off over the top and a little overstimulating. But on one positive note, taking away from all this, yes, we're going to be going back to Barry Keoghan a lot and Oliver. It makes you just that much more just kind of want to attach to Oliver and be like, yeah, I'm just going to hang out with this dude over here. Though I do want to say now, because this gets into the point where you're like halfway through this 2-hour plus movie, and you're like, okay, what is really happening here? What is the story trying to lead into? And all I'm going to say, guys, is that the film knows how to shock you, and it does it when you're least expecting it from the least expected directions. For example, again, Oliver's character, it goes in a direction with his character where you're like, okay, I'm seeing some of the stuff that was potentially hinted at in the very beginning of this movie, and it goes in that feeling of like not necessarily a mystery, but more of like an unraveling, where you're like, okay, there are definitely some layers to this film that really make for it just, again, where you're just gonna have to take this film one at a time. And even with Oliver's character specifically, it goes in some pretty, let's say, memorable scenes where you're like, alright, I get the feeling that it's time to put my guard up a little bit. And excuse me if this sounds a little bit toxic, but it just felt like I had been a little bit toyed with up to this point. And it felt fucking awesome. And once you really see what the movie is, what it really was trying to tell, it just is such a consistent psychological film that is just a roller coaster of emotions, and it displays these emotions and certain themes in that make for a really just uncomfortable, rewatchable, unforgettable, and yes, unhinged experience. And lastly, I do want to say something that is really disappointing. It is actually like my only real issue, and that is that the film comes to a point where you're like, okay, that needs to be the ending. If it would have ended there, this film would have been so tight. It would have left you just absolutely drained. It would have left you on a note where you're just like, fuck you, but like, I get it. I sat through this whole movie. I saw what I was getting. It makes sense. But sadly, this is one of those films where it just feels like it doesn't want to end. Not necessarily where it doesn't know when to end. It was like, again, there was this point where I'm like, wait, there's more? Why? And it's just a thing where nothing after this is nearly as strong, as necessary, as engaging, and a lot of it you're just kind of like, okay, there's like stuff I want to take out of it because I liked so much of the movie, but again, you just can't ignore how unnecessary this kind of last, like, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, whatever, kind of felt. But overall, guys, I was absolutely blown away and just, I was not prepared for what this movie was really gonna give me. Even though I was more or less going into this movie expecting a cryptic mindfuck. And overall, I can't recommend this film enough. I'm giving Saltburn a positive review. So guys, that is going to do it for my thoughts on Saltburn. I absolutely adored this movie. I cannot wait to watch it again. I highly recommend it, but just know it is a little bit like dry at some points. It can overstay its welcome with some scenes, and it is obviously longer than it certainly needs to be. But if you're going into this film expecting the unexpected, not knowing what to gain out of it, and you're kind of like nervous going into that, you're gonna have fun with this film. But yes, guys, that is all I have to say about Saltburn. I recently put up a review of Wish before it came out, and I just gotta thank you guys so much for the attraction that you guys gave that review. I'm just overjoyed with the amount of fun I had with the comments. You guys were so accepting and so supportive of this review. You guys gave a lot of just really fun comments, a lot of comments that were really up my alley, and a lot from just a lot of new viewers that I hadn't seen from the channel. So if you're new to the channel, I really appreciate you being here, and if you have been someone who has supported the channel for a long time, I also want to just give you guys so much thanks and just so much love from the bottom of my heart, because you guys are absolutely the top thing that just makes this all worthwhile. But yes, with all that being said, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for watching my review of Saltburn. I hope you check it out, and I hope you enjoyed the review. Take care.